So you want to know how to paint your in-scale vehicles? Why don't you stick around and watch the segment, see how we do it on my in-scale model railroad, this AR secondary. Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and in-scale, and welcome back to the paint shop. So this is going to be our first episode in the new paint shop series. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been running this series, but we're going to get cranking again, doing some more projects, and I thought doing some vehicles would be the best way to start it off. So I've gotten tons and tons of questions on this topic on my social media platforms, and I figured let's just go ahead and make this video. So, in-scale vehicles. So I'm modeling 1988, and if you look at the market for in-scale vehicles right now, most of the major manufacturers are either making two time periods: 50s transition era or modern day. When you're modeling a certain period, you're looking for certain types of vehicles. It's very hard in in-scale to come by. So thankfully, Shapeways has changed our modeling. So what I've been doing is going on Shapeways, and I found a couple people who have shops. The one I specifically use a lot of is Madaboutcars. I'm going to throw the link up in the comment section down below. And this gentleman here, he produces a lot great quality items, and he really focuses on the time period from the mid to early 70s till about the late 80s. He also has some early 90s stuff. So he's got that time period that I'm really looking for. And the catalog of vehicles that this gentleman does is unbelievable. This one here, just this for example, right off the bat. So this is a finished product. This here is a 1979 Dodge Aspen station wagon. That car, the reason I picked that car is because that was the car that me and my brother grew up in. My parents, it was their first new car that they bought in 1979. So when I saw he had it, I was like, oh, I gotta have it. But he has all those oddball models that you're looking for. And yeah, and they're great quality. He puts a lot of detail into them, and so the 3D print. But the problem with the 3D prints is this: you either have a windowless vehicle where you're going to have to make the windows, and that would be like, for instance, this is a police car. It is a Ford Crown Vic. There was no windows in it, so I had to use some modeling techniques to make my own windows. The other type of model that he makes, like this Dodge Aspen station wagon, is it has windows in it. So that also leads you up to the next point, is how to do the windows when they're there. So I've kind of like experimented with a bunch of different techniques, and we're going to go over that in this video. The other type of vehicles that I've grown to really love is two manufacturers, GHQ and Showcase Miniatures. Both are cast metal products. However, I did notice the last batch of Showcase Miniatures that I got, a lot of the cabs for the trucks have come through in resin, where the rest of the components are all cast metal. So I'm not really too sure what that is, but I will say this: I actually like it better, because with the cast metal products, so like this 359 Peterbilt, this is from GHQ. It's a cast metal. The problem is with the cast metal, there's a lot of imperfections in the cab, so there's a lot more work to do, and there's a lot more to hide. Whereas if you take this Freightliner cab over, this is a Showcase Miniature, that is a resin cab, and I found the cabs to be almost flawless. So there's not much pre-work to do before paint. So, and generally speaking, I use Showcase Miniatures and GHQ for all my large trucks. Now, 3D printing on Shapeways. There is people out there that do tons of trucks, and there's a large selection from various errors. However, I found their price to be a little high. And I assume that is because the people doing the 3D renderings, they're putting a lot of time into it. So that's kind of why I shy away from them on Shapeways, and I go with the major manufacturers for the trucks. Generally speaking, like I believe this, just going off the cuff here, I believe this Showcase Manager Freightliner, I believe it was $13 or so, where you look at some of these 3D printed trucks, they're running like $20 to $30. So that's kind of like why I'm shying away from the 3D printed trucks. There is Trainworks. Everybody who's in Inscale now knows Trainworks is making these phenomenal trucks. However, I have a huge problem with paying that much money for a 1/160th scale model of a truck. I think that some of their trucks are going for $40. I mean, that to me is very hard to do because that's the cost of pretty much 2 freight cars. So I'm like, no, that's not really an option. And then they did, like, I was just on the other day, the Smokey and the Bandit truck from Trainworks was, it's been out of stock. I guess they stopped production. It was like a limited production run. And there's people out there paying $200 for that model on eBay. I'm like, no, not getting involved in that. But that's kind of like a whole nother subset of this. The other major manufacturer of vehicles that I've been able to adapt would be the Atlas. And Atlas makes a lot of the Ford 9000 series day cabs. I use those. They're like a dime a dozen. They're really inexpensive, but the problem is very little detail and kind of like commonplace. Where when growing up, I don't remember seeing too many Ford 9000s around in this area. You know, growing up truck-wise, I remember lots of Peterbilts, lots of Mac Rs, and you know, so I got them just to get them to kind of fill in the void. But I'm going to start working them out. I'm not going to have as many. So that's always an option too, and they're fairly inexpensive. I think the two Ford cabs, I think go for around $15 or so in on Atlas. From Atlas. So there's another option for you. Trailers. That's the one thing I am researching that as of this point in filming this video, I still haven't really finished is trailers. So Atlas makes a lot of great trailers, 45-foot pines, 48-foot pines, and the 53-footers. They make some of those too. So generally speaking, for my time period, for van trailers, I kind of steer away from the 53-footer because I'm in the 80s. 53-footers really didn't become widely accepted. Looking briefly on Google, is 1989. So I don't think they're really period specific for my my layout. Now, as for the other types of trailers that I'm using with my trucks, that's kind of like hit or miss. However, recently I found a new vendor, royalmodels.com. I'm going to throw the link up in the section. I have just ordered 6 trailers. I ordered 2 48-foot reefers and 4 tankers. And I'm still waiting for them to come in. They didn't come in at the end of this video, so I couldn't really feature them. So it's going to have to be for another video. And I haven't even explored the option of getting them made through Shapeways yet. So, you know, in doing the research and workup for this video, I realized that, you know, in-scale vehicles are really their own subset hobby of their own. If you go check it out on Facebook, there's actually a Facebook page devoted to just in-scale vehicles. And there's a lot of people posting. So it's something to think about. But, you know, I use the vehicles in this layout to really tell the story, because, you know, seeing a factory building without vehicles kind of doesn't really set the scene. That's how I feel. And also, you know, like the downtown area of Jamesburg with all those roads and stuff, it looks very barren, you know, but once you start populating with vehicles, it kind of helps tell your story. And, you know, using the period correct vehicles is also another key when you're putting your layout together. Okay, so let's get into the video. Let's go watch the process on how I do my vehicles and how I paint them. I've come up with a good process now where I just did the latest batch was 40 vehicles in total. It took about 2 weeks, and that's not 2 weeks of constant working, but, you know, it took me 2 weeks to do all 40. And then through the video, I'll give you some tips as I go and talk about my process. So why don't you sit back, watch the video, and I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay, so here we are getting started. So the first thing I do is I go ahead and assemble the metal kits, and then I prep the 3D printed ones by cleaning them up and getting them ready for primer. I bring them over here to my spray booth, and I'm just using some Model Flex gray primer, and I'll just go ahead and prime them up. Then I'll let them dry overnight. So the next thing I do is I start selecting groups of vehicles and picking my base color. Then I'll go ahead in and spray the vehicles in that group of the base color, and I'll just go. This one here is Model Flex TTX Yellow. In the next scene, you'll see I'm using Tester's acrylic red through the airbrush. Here I'm trying some Tester's acrylic gloss, and I'm brush painting it on. I found out by brush painting it gets super shiny, so I really like the effect. So I'm just doing some black here on some various different vehicles, and we'll let that dry overnight. So here we are the next day, we're going to get started painting. So once the base color dries overnight, I come in and I start doing all of my framework and tires and windows. With the trucks, you know, if you look at some of the trucks, they'll have painted frames or they'll just have black frames. The painted frames, but what I mean by that is by the same color as the cab, kind of depending on if the truck owner wants to customize it. So keep that in mind, you can kind of add some variation to your different trucks. So this is the Showcase Miniatures Freightliner cab over, and we're going to go ahead and paint that frame black. And then once that sets up, then we'll come in and we'll do our accent colors, silver for the chrome on the tank and the stacks and all the various other details. Okay, so here we are getting started with the windows. When you're working with the 3D printed models that have the windows installed, I just use a zero brush and some paint and paint them, just taking my time to get them in all the little corners and make it look nice and neat. With the light vehicles, the light colored vehicles, I use black for the windows. I find that makes sense. And but with the black vehicles, I've experimented with various different kinds and shades of blue. And I found that the Model Flex Rock Island Blue is a really good color for the windows. It makes sense and it doesn't look too bluish. So yeah, I really like the outcome. So here I'm working on the wheels and various other details. One tip that I can give to you is make sure you're painting the bottom of the tires and the back side of the tires, because I do find when you leave them gray and you're taking photographs of your layout, it does kind of show sometimes. So yeah, take the extra effort just to do that. And also the axles and any under frame detail that's hanging down, because it will show. now I'm going to get started working on details. When I'm doing like a high polished chrome look, you know, like on the fire trucks or the stacks on the trucks, or even like some of the show cars that you want to look really nice, I use the Tester's Silver. It's got a real nice metallic and it flows really nice. Otherwise, in the next series of clips you'll see, I use a paint pen, so I'll talk more about that. So now I'm just taking the time to go through here and just paint up various details chromed. You know, fire trucks have lots of chrome, so that's what I'm doing. American LaFrance ladder is going to get the same treatment. With the ladder truck, I went a little more dressier. I did the wheels in chrome. I did some more chrome steps than I did with the engine. The engine I kind of kept like just like a city look, colored wheels with not so much chrome running boards. I'm working on my everyday drivers and my work trucks and stuff. I'm just going to use this Sharpie, this silver Sharpie. I find it's very easy to use and it dries very quickly, so you don't got to worry about paint getting on your fingers and getting everywhere else. The only problem is that sometimes you have to do like 2 coats, so just let it set up for about 10-15 minutes and come in with a second coat, and it's very quick and easy. So as you can see, I can do the hubcaps, the bumpers, the grills, and it goes on. Now we're going to start working with the Tester's stop signal red and turn signal amber. It's kind of like a translucent type paint, so it works really good when you put a silver base down where you want to paint the lights, and then you kind of just put it on. It flows on really thick. It's kind of like almost like a nail polish type paint, and it really does the stops the turn signals and the emergency lights really look like they're real plastic. So I like this paint. It's really old. I've had it for a long time, but it's still really good. Okay, so now we're going to start putting windows in the vehicles that don't have the windows installed. To do this, I'm using, from Micromart, I'm using Micro Clear. You apply it with a toothpick, so you go around the edge of the window and outline it, and then you kind of just use a wiping motion across the surface of it. You'll see how I do it there. It works really good. I have found that, sometimes when you do it too thin, it develops little holes in it, so you may have to do a second application. So just keep that in mind when you're working with it. Cleans up really easily when it's still wet, and when it dries, it's not that noticeable if you get it on the paint or the vehicle itself. to start working on putting some decals on some of my work trucks and the fire trucks. I'm using decals from various different sources. We'll talk about that more later. And then I'll use microscales clear to seal them up to protect them so they don't come off. And that wraps up our work. Okay, everyone, so there you go. That's how we did it. Some afterthoughts here. You know, the one big thing that kind of helped me out with this last batch of vehicles, the first batch of vehicles that I did about a year ago, and that included all the maintenance away vehicles that you saw me putting the decals on, was colors. I used, for the first batch, I used a bunch of Model Flex railroad colors. And it kind of got to see the same colors over and over again, so I'm like, I got to vary it up. So I went out and did a lot of research, and lo and behold, I found that, I guess, Testors is starting to make paint again. I thought it would for sure that they would be wouldn't be able to find it. I like Testors paints in those little jars because for brush painting, I thought, you know, it's a very great paint just to put on a brush and paint it. And I just remember from doing plastic models from years ago when I was younger, is that I always used Testors. So went out to do some research and found a couple sets that were actually on Amazon, and ordered them and got them shipped here. And I said, oh, I never thought of it. Maybe these paints are so old, they've been sitting on the shelf. Flipped the box over, and it was actually, all the data was copyrighted 2021. So I'm like, okay, and it said Rust-Oleum Corporation, so I guess, okay, maybe Rust-Oleum decided not to stop making the Testors paints. I don't know. Anybody out there's got any more further information, let me know, but the paint sets that I got were awesome. It was actually the first time that I've experimented with Testors enamel through the airbrush, and used, for my thinning medium, I just used alcohol, and wow. Yeah, it came out really good. I had to crank the pressure up a little because it was a little thicker. Maybe I should have thinned it out a little more. But yeah, it came out beautifully. The only thing is I did notice is when you brush paint the Testors gloss acrylic, it comes out super shiny. You know, like on this truck here, this black Peterbilt. That came out really shiny. But then when you airbrush it, same paint, this is the red, like the Freightliner, it doesn't come out as shiny. So I think it's just optimized for brush painting, to be honest with you. So yeah, go check it out. I always like the Testors. I still have 2 jars that you saw me working with. The Turn Signal Red and Turn Signal Amber. Those jars are like 15 years old. And they're still really good. So yeah, it's got the shelf life. If you clean off the rim and tighten it down nice, it lasts a long time. Windows, yeah, the windows. I used that the micro clear from Micro Mart, and I I learned more from last time. Last time I didn't do it, I did it too thin, so some of the windshields on my first vehicles maybe had a little pinhole in it or something. This one I found if you just do let it set till it's almost clear and do another application over the top, it'll seal up all the holes. It kind of uses that first layer as a base. And but don't be afraid, because the second layer took like twice as long to dry. So I saw all these white dots in it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to come out. But after a day, it actually all cleared up. So don't be afraid to put a second coat on over that. I found that it really helps for the windows that don't come out perfectly. And getting that turn signal paint for, you know, like the amber lights, warning lights, and the tail lights, the key is to really put a base coat of silver down. It kind of helps out with the reflection of the light through it, because it is like a clear type of paint. And so getting that silver backdrop actually makes it present itself better on the other colors like black. So decals on vehicles. So up until recently, I really never thought about decals on vehicles. But the problem came when I did the maintenance of way vehicles. So you saw they were yellow, but they may be Conrail, but what does it mean? So I thought decals are really the key to tie it all together. So, you know, doing a lot of research and talking to a lot of other modelers, I was turned on to a company called CMR Products. I'm going to post their link up in the description so you can find them. And that's where I was able to get those maintenance of way truck decals. And they actually have a bunch of truck decals that now that I've tried their product, and they make a really nice decal. I was a little apprehensive at first, but once I got them going on, yeah, really nice. And he has a whole list of different decals you can get for vehicles, but I think that really helped make the vehicle. So now you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a Conrail maintenance of way vehicle, because you see the logo on the side of the truck. So yeah, I think that's a key that a lot of us overlook, because a lot of us don't like working with those little tiny decals for the sides of the vehicles. But if you can grin and bear it and get it done, it's well worth it. The other key was if you looked at the trucks, the fire trucks. The fire trucks were the American La France ones from GHQ. And those models I used, they're not for the Englishtown Fire Department. I'm kind of loosely modeling them on the Freehold Fire Department trucks, because they had 2 American La Frances. And so putting the numbers on the side really said, if you look at that engine, you're like, oh, that's Freehold Fire Department engine 1. I get it now. So, and the ladder was Goodwill Hook and Ladder, which is number 4. So, you know, it really makes it all come together. And I think putting those decals on the fire trucks really tied it all together. And the decals for the fire trucks that I used were actually micro scale decals. It was a CSX 2000 to present diesel locomotives. And I guess they were actually goldish. They weren't that traditional yellow that CSX used. So I looked at those and I'm like, I don't even know why I ordered them. I can't remember why. Oh, for the American flags. I wanted the American flags for the cabs. But those were actually a perfect fit for that, because of that gold color kind of makes it look like it's gold leaf. So yeah, so definitely decals, something to think about. So that's going to put a wrap here on the paint shop. So if you're seeing this video for the first time, you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, because we'd love to have you follow along. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And otherwise, that's all I got for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.